Ahoo, werewolves of London. Oh, it is Halloween time. Scary, scary as we're entering into the month of October. Ahoo, scary, scary Count Floyd, scary skiing team gentlemen. I'm looking at three very scary gentlemen, myself included. Scary, scary three of clubs, giving me a look right now with a vaguely eye roll look on it. As he goes in from a Count Floyd voice. What, you not a Second City television? You in with that? You down with Second City TV? Count Floyd?
Yeah, man. Just keep going. Keep going like Keanu trying to pull up a British accent, man. Just own it, man. Just own the space. Don't worry about it.
I gotta be honest with you. If I keep going with
Me
it,
and
like
Gary
Keanu,
Oldman
who I
make
used
this
to,
a classic no matter what.
I used to rag on Keanu, and now I can't even do it anymore because also every meme about him says he's the nicest guy in the freaking world, and you know he just kind of held in there and kind of owns his space, and he's John Wick.
And he's way better with guns than you at this point.
I would imagine so. Yeah,
he's way better with guns and a lot of things. Does not save him from what he was trying to accomplish accent-wise in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Just point out.
We don't talk about that.
We don't see it. I mean,
and I'm the guy that defends him for things like he can act like walking the clouds. I'm not cutting the guy down at the knees for no reason. I'm just saying that your werewolf was about as good as his British accent in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, really, there was a lot of missed opportunities there, and a lot of it was such a product of the time. I mean, you know, going back.
That movie fucking rocks. First of all, I just want to go on wax and say that movie rocks. I don't want anyone to misconstrue my thoughts or feelings about it. I actually didn't even care about his accent in the movie. What I always felt about the movie is because the first couple of scenes start off like trippy. I kind of felt like what Bram Stoker or whoever was making the movie, the people behind it was like, hey, we're going to trip balls this whole fucking movie. Doesn't matter what happens. Some things are going to happen. Some things are not. We're just going to, hey, just let it happen, man. Don't get weird. Just let it be. And that's the way I took the movie. So by the time we got to his accent, I'm like, yeah, all right, this sort of makes sense for what I've been watching.
What's this? Well, yeah. Okay. You know, I mean, it's one of those things. I have to go give it another watch again. It's been a little while. I got to see how it's aged, right? You know, at the time, Winona Ryder was like really a central, you know, like one of those A-list actresses at the time. And now she's kind of coming back again, and good for her. But like, I must say, I really enjoy her performance these days in Stranger Things. Maybe it's because we both aged and I see her playing a mom and everything else that I'm like, I feel like, you know, she's really come into her own more so than when she was acting in that particular film. I just felt like her, Keanu Reeves, zero chemistry. Like, and I don't know. They just didn't seem, you know, there just seemed to be no love story there and really even Gary Oldman between her and him. It just never really worked for me. I just always felt like there was a lot left on the table there. They really could have showed some more, especially with that kind of acting talent. A quick shout out, just a little something I left out last week. I feel bad. I'm starting to pick up the Three of Clubs, you know, mannerisms now.
Yeah, you are.
We're like, you know, we're living as roommates, and I guess our cycles have come together. I guess, you know, like that old myth.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing you've ever said to me.
Oh my God, you know, it's amazing. But did just want to give a shout out to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson again after that, because we went out apple picking today, so we had music going there, and we had music in the car, and his run as Maui came up saying you're welcome, and I'm like, you know, that's just another thing I feel like I left on the table, you know, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson singing being Maui. That, you know, that was clearly taking that, you know, that acting chops to the next level and putting it on there. So I felt like we left that out in our wrestling episode. So I want to make sure to get that out first thing before we move on to scary subject matter.
You're welcome.
There we go. That's the way of it. Well, it is I, Josh the Birdman, bringing us back into our pop culture forum here. I am joined, as always, by my two amazing compatriots, my compadres, I'm trying to think of any other terms looking out there for my cohort going Latin All right.
Cohort. is good.
Comrades, if you want to go topical.
Comrade.
Comrade. Hello,
Yes.
comrade.
Yes, as we are of course in the most socialist subject of pop culture here in the U.S. no less. I am joined by the one and only Greg RaShaun, the Star Child. How you doing today?
Oh, ready to hack and slash, man. I mean, we're gonna stop at slashing, but there's room for compound fractures, contusions, blunt force trauma, because we don't kink shame.
All right, fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough. It's always still our first and foremost here, and there does seem to be a frightening little bit of crossover here. But I'm gonna swing that back over with that hell of a transition. I'm gonna swing that back over to the Three of Clubs. How you doing today?
What did it do? How did he do? I'm ready to have a killer time like the rest of us. And funny thing, just real quick side thing on October and Halloween and all the quick accents that we move to when it comes to that time of year. I'm starting to wonder as I get older, is this the time of year that people from like the Vanias, the Transylvania, all the Vanias. I'm not going to name them all because obviously I forgot them. I just literally went to Transylvania and I'm not even sure if that's a real place, but all those areas.
Part of Romania, but that's okay.
Right? Romania, Bulgaria, I actually have a few friends from Bulgaria. I'm just wondering if it's one of those times a year where people if they're just walking around like constantly being like, what the fuck? Like just walking into a store and someone just drops a horrible stereotypical accent that's supposed to sound like someone from where they're from. Like, are they under attack this entire month? I'm really starting to that's in my head now. So I'm doing
good.
well.
That's all good. I think you may have offended our Romani listeners, but that's all right. We can smooth it out later on.
While trying to stick up, I definitely
it crosses
pissed on all over.
It crosses Romani and Romanian, only in that Bela Lugosi was the first one of the first sound talking Draculas.
Wasn't that dude Italian?
I thought he was Hungarian, to my knowledge.
Right.
I will have to double check. Bela it's
Bela,
a name that could be there, but it's a pretty Hungarian name. Bela.
I was thinking more of the Lugosi.
Yeah, Lugosi. Yeah, I believe it is. But once again, I'll when it gets that time, I'll double check on some IMDb. We'll see.
But like that just brings up a totally.
He was Hungarian.
He was.
Thank you.
Okay.
That just brings up a totally separate point that I've made on this podcast multiple times that people really need to start understanding when it comes to history. Guys, the merchant routes tell the real history of the world. Our civilization has been way more connected for thousands of more years than we think. So it would make sense that me thinking of an Italian name would be Hungarian when you look at the map and they're not that far apart. And the fact that trade routes were going on for thousands of years before we even give them credit for. So chances are it was probably just a giant, big global community way back then, even in the Dark Ages. Weird. Holy shit, we're behind the Dark Ages. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween with that.
Happy Halloween.
But that's where it
Happy
is.
Rosh Hashanah.
And Lashana Tova to our listeners who celebrate. It'll be probably well past that, but we're just recording. Of course, I'm doing my religious duty and recording.
This could be the Rosh Hashanah episode that they listen to every Rosh Hashanah from
that.
Here on out.
I think we've started a new tradition, a combination of slasher horror and Rosh Hashanah.
That's the best way to start a year.
That's the way to start the new year. Maybe a bloody and sweet new year. Yes, indeed. Well, most of that blood was indeed cornstarch mixed in with, developing fluid of all things. In some of the original slasher movies. Yes, but it is October. It's the Steam Gentlemen's one of our favorite months because we get to delve into and just have fun with all things that are horror. I believe in one of our text conversations there, it was RaShaun who said, it's like asking an Olympic caliber swimmer to swim around the lazy river, I think was what you said. Is that, how much fun we have with this subject. So
yeah, that's close enough.
Close enough. All right.
Close enough.
Always when we're trying to go back and recall textversation on audio. That's always the most fun. The people love that, don't you? That's it's like your dad telling you the same story the 15th time.
It's why they're here.
It gets better each
to be
time.
fair, the story really only gets good around the 9th time, so you're not really appreciating it until the 11th time. I mean, that's only fair.
It's like a fine wine. Got to let it age a little bit. You got to go back and revisit it a little bit.
You got to hate it to start picking up the good details. You know what I mean? Like you really have to get to loathing something to really start finding the best details. And after a while, that's when it becomes magic. That's when it becomes lore.
Yeah, it's because on and on through history. But we wanted to start this month, and we wanted to start off right. We wanted to go into horror, and we wanted to start off with, well, the genre that begins it all, that ends it all, that is horror, that isn't horror, that we love and we hate, and all of those things wound up in just a great big horror burrito. It is, in fact, the slasher genre. Now, we are three children of the 80s. So there was just no way we were not going to be affected by this genre, because this genre came out just before the 80s, really, 78, 79 with the original Halloween. And then really that genre was perfected and oversaturated and taken to every particular possible height that you could imagine in that time. Really, I think most of it just being that a lot of people could, with just a little bit of imagination, and who were certainly willing to, rip each other off. You could just, get together some cornstarch and, corn syrup, excuse me. And, maybe a little ketchup, who knows? Everybody had their own recipe, and, enough blood on screen, and, bingo, bango, you had yourself a slasher flick. But again, we being the Steams gentlemen, we kind of like to ask ourselves, like, well, what does this really mean? Like, why were we attracted to this genre? Why did they make so many of these films? Why was it so popular? Why is it still, it still has its moments. They still, make these little gems, though they have fallen off, I think, really, the navel gazing we got into with Scream, an important point, but we had, at that point, we've noticed our own fascination with the genre and the subgenre, and then we're making movies specifically referencing the subgenre in meta in real time. Well, why is it? What is it that keeps bringing us back to the idea of the macabre and the disgusting and the disturbed psychotic killers? That's, what we are here to discuss today. So with that, without further ado, I want to give that over to the Star Child, who really wanted to go first today, because, he was just rearing to go on our slasher subject. So Star Child, take it away.
There's a hole in the world like a great black pit, and it's filled with people who are filled with shit, and the vermin of the world inhabit it. But not for long. They all deserve to die. Sweeney Todd, I think, is about 100 years old. So for a slasher topic, I wanted to start with this because it was, I don't know, there's something special about bringing people in to laugh at buckets and buckets of blood and guts and then feeding it to everyone. The joy of it, I want to look at it from a couple of perspectives. All slashers are metaphors for something at the end of the day. I think we recommended a movie called Behind the Mask a couple of times. It's a deep dive and a deconstruction, but it's not lazy. And that's part of the reason I like that. But that's for something else. For here, we're going to go into the violent. There's rape, there's cannibalism, there's child abuse, and worst of all, Marxism. And we're going to bring all of that. We're going to take a look at all of that because the story the character started in A Penny Dreadful. If you don't know what A Penny Dreadful was, that was I think they actually cost a penny, and they were just these little violent stories that people wanted to read. Why? Because it was industrial London. It was awful. It was a shitty, dark place, bodies in the street, filth in the street, unbelievable amounts of poverty, and you actually created a class that was worse than the aristocracy. It was unbelievable. So if you didn't feel like the landlords were crushing you already, now these people are really trying to grind every little bit of blood and sweat out of you. And so, yes, that gave rise to Charles Dickens, but it also gave birth to Bertolt Brecht and Karl Marx, because it was about showing, and between Karl Marx and Bertolt Brecht and Charles Dickens, you kind of had the mentality behind not just the Penny Dreadfuls, but Sweeney Todd. Because what is it essentially? It's a guy who's just feeling lower than low, who, for one reason or another, turns to this brand of violence. And the metaphors are fantastic. Like you're killing mostly the wealthy at first. You're killing mostly the wealthy and powerful, and then chopping them up and feeding them back to the people in pies. It was absolutely glorious. But you get to use that as a metaphor for a lot of things. You get to use it as a metaphor for, how the poor, even though they should band together, actually end up eating each other. You could use that as a metaphor for how people turn to methods of control. And I'm going to touch on that in a little while, but it's also these people who do rise up out of poverty using these violent and twisted means, but then they become even more perverse as well. Like, it ends up saying a lot about our society and how at the end of the day, you'll always fail. You're always going to lose. You can't fight the state. You can't fight the wealthy. You can't fight the powers that be, because you're busy, again, eating each other. And that's part of the magic of this play. And it never really gets away from every version, never really gets away from that. There was a play. It was in the 1970s. I think it was 1973, but it was based on a book by Chris Bond. And Chris Bond is the one who puts in the revenge tale, because before then it was just, this sick kind of almost campy barber killing people. But he puts in the revenge tale about the judge and Sweeney Todd's wife and the young man and the other ward and Mrs. Lovett and so on. And this version was absolutely amazing. It actually starred George Hearn and Angela Lansbury. Yeah,
I was going to say
Murder, She Wrote.
Yep.
Yeah, Murder, She Wrote. It was fantastic. It was absolutely amazing. And the beauty of the play, because they were like, are people really going to laugh at this? Like, we're butchering untold amounts of people. There's a part where they're just rapidly killing tons of people. And, can we really get people to laugh at it? And they created a kind of meta theater. Like, this was really smart too. They created a kind of meta theater where the audience is in on the joke that's in all of the songs, and the person that they're singing to isn't in on the joke. So you have that extra bit of maliciousness that you're enjoying. And Stephen Sondheim made it a point. He wrote, I think, all of the songs. And Stephen Sondheim made it a point, because that's the participatory part of the play, because now you're involved in the murder too. You are an accomplice as well. And you know what? It's fabulous. It just makes it that much more enjoyable, because it's like, yes, we're absolutely part of this murder. Like, no one's going to jump up and warn the person who's about to get in the chair. That's part of the point of it. So that kind of became the standard for that Sweeney Todd. Like, it bounced all over Broadway. It bounced all over London. It was really popular for a good amount of time. And it's a great subject matter. Absolutely a great subject matter. And you can see the metaphors as deeply as you want to go, because you have, like I said, Sweeney Todd, he's kind of taking this power into his own hands for his own reasons. And they, show this to different degrees in the movies. So in the movies now, so the BBC did make a version of this. It starred Ray Winstone and a very young Tom Hardy. It came out in 2006, and it was actually really good. I really enjoyed it. It does not have the revenge tale that Chris Bond put in, but his reason for doing what he's doing is he calls it his kill grief, because he had an abusive childhood. And what do we do? What is the core of a lot of addictions? The core of a lot of addictions is getting control through this act that is pleasurable. And that's what he ends up doing. That's where he ends up just like stuffing down all of these failings. Because, you see Ray Winstone and you're like, you don't think that he's Sweeney Todd. Like he's like a really big, burly British guy, but it works perfectly because he doesn't say much in the film, but that's that repressed emotion. That's those emotions that he didn't deal with that he deals with by cutting these people's throats and feeding them to pigs. And same thing goes for Mrs. Lovett. You know, Mrs. Lovett in this version, she uses sex and she uses that to get control, to get power, and she enjoys it. But then she contracts the pox and she loses her looks. So when she finds out what Sweeney Todd is doing, she gets on board because now she needs that other thing to have power and control with as well. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it. And then, of course, there's the 2007 version with Tim Burton. It's very Tim Burton. Everything that's present day is macabre and dark and gritty, and everything that's a flashback is blindingly rosy, like unbelievably bright. And obviously that's something that Tim Burton likes to do. He likes to play with colors and he likes to play with the macabre, you know, going all the way back to Edward Scissorhands. And in this version, again, you have Mrs. Lovett who kind of jumps on board because she is a reflection of just how far you had to go to survive as a woman in this period. I mean, let's be honest, you know, men are always finding some way to get themselves killed or just running off. And so women have to just survive. And, you know, you saw that a lot in that period in London. And that's what she reflects, you know, like Spirelli, you know, he's the charlatan. He has to be a charlatan because he has to have the fact that he's Irish. So he ends up being that kind of thief, you know, or, you know, even Sweeney Todd, absolutely. A man who's just beaten down and turns to antisocial behavior. And this is not drink. It's not opium. It's murder, a lot of murder. But that's exactly the point. And then it goes back to that point about Marxism and Bertolt Brecht. You know, it's about the people and what they're being pushed to that is pushing them to violence. Or at least that's the way I like to think of it. You know, I like a little Marxism in my horror. There was also a fun fact. There was a 1936 version. It was a movie, and the guy who played it was named Todd Slaughter. I mean, how perfect! I know, right? You can't make shit like that up. Yeah. His name was Todd Slaughter.
Todd.
Yeah, Todd. It's not worth seeing. Don't watch it. Like, it's not. He plays it up like really terribly, and it's unbelievably campy. So I mean, unless you want to see a purposely bad violent movie, then go ahead, but it's not a great movie. But I highly recommend the 2006 version by the BBC. I think they don't put in everything that everyone expects, but I feel like what they do add in ends up being really smart. And for a good Marxist Tim Burton good time, the one in 2007, the songs, they're good. I imagine them being better. I've never seen the live show live. I've just seen the VHS of the Angela Lansbury version, but the songs are fun to sing after a while. So you'll love it. Oh, and Alan Rickman's in it.
Well, Alan Rickman, of course.
And Alan Rickman.
You know, rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really, firstly, I just, you know, I got my film school boner on that you mentioned Bertolt Brecht in the same breath as Karl Marx. So, you know, well done.
You're welcome.
Done.
You're welcome.
Wanted so bad to break the fifth wall right there. Just wanted so bad. Be like, and now I am addressing the audience and interrupting Gregory's point to remind us that we are in fact in a medium. So well done there. You know, it's interesting. You know, you brought up I hadn't, you know, I'm surprised I'd never thought of the metaphor of societal, you know, societal cannibalism, right? In with the real cannibalism, because we'll get to cannibalism in my example, but it does seem to be like deep in our fear base for sure. Right. That it's there, going all the way back to Titus Andronicus, right? That's how he gets revenge upon the people who hurt him, right? He literally feeds his own, the same thing, meat pies, right? He feeds her children back to her in meat pies. So the theme has existed for a long time, right?
Oh yeah.
And you're certainly pointing that out. And also, yes, because you cannot you can't take away the fact that Sweeney Todd is taking place in that height of industrial London, which
Mhm.
like I say, if you're in a capitalist society and seems like it's been relatively good to you, fair enough. But I do always like to remind people that is the period that you wish to be cautious of if you're
Mhm.
talking about unfettered laissez-faire capitalism, which in fact creates a kind of horror that you cannot get out of, right?
Yeah.
In and of itself. So good. That was some fun stuff. Really interesting. Well, really interesting things I'm gonna have to chew on and digest. You see what I did there? Hey, we're talking about Sweeney Todd, talking about the meat pies. Last point I'll make though. The sweetest song that ever comes out of that is "Nothing's Gonna Hurt You, Not While I'm Around." That's
Oh yeah, Toby.
right
Yeah,
to Toby. So it's kind of funny. I always thought it was so funny. And maybe "I Love You, a Bushel and a Peck" came out of that too. I can't remember if that's it, but it was always funny that like some of these really sweet loving songs came out of a play about chopping up, killing people and chopping them up, putting them in.
Well, that was it. He wanted, I mean, it's important to show that, even in that filth, you see these glimpses of humanity. They're just so dirty.
Yeah.
They're so dirty. Like you gotta wipe away a lot of, soot off of a lot of faces in order to find the humanity.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. What you thinking there? 3 o'clock. So you hungry for a meat pie?
No, what I'm thinking about is that if ever there was a representative high school moment, figuratively speaking, of who we were and what tables we're sitting at, this is a total I'm at the jock table moment. While you guys are ripping about Sweeney Todd and musicals and all that, because I'm over here like never fucking seen the movie. I kind of know what you guys are talking about, but past that, like I'm just lost. Like I'm just over here, like keep going, nerds.
Nerds.
Oh my god, it's so hilarious. It's like I'm sitting here thinking now. I'm starting to think like my grade average is like this is why they got a higher grade average. I didn't even read the book. I mean, fuck.
For the record, you did not get good grades knowing about that. You didn't. Yeah.
No,
yeah, exactly. English and math standardized test. Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all our schools were a little bit different, I'm sure, but I would argue in our generation there was a lot of room for knowing your classic English literatures, be it modern or Renaissance, classical, blah blah blah. And it did parlay into like different type of AP classes. I'm just and I'm sure this is anecdotal, but I'm just thinking also of my high school, and I would argue every single smart person in the 475 people I graduated with probably knew and watched or read something on Sweeney Todd. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, yeah, I'm a total jock. Shit. All right.
Oh, you should see the Tim Burton version. I'd say
that's worth it. And hey,
I don't disagree. I mean, the funny part is if my wife walked in, she could probably start singing some of the songs. So,
and pretty women standing over.
Yeah, Greg getting his musical theater geek on. I love it.
Pretty women.
No, he was mostly in the art room, working on his canvas. But still,
I mean, really, we're talking about Josh because we've already established that Greg barely even spent time in his school, so he was on the school review.
He would go to each art department though, in each he had a painting going in each space.
This is what you're working with acrylics.
I'm going over Boston Latin. Yeah, I spent. If you want, when I actually went into the building, I didn't go to my classes. I went to the classes I wanted to go to. And that was the theater, photo lab, art studio. We ended up getting a little awkward, but we still, I just made my schedule. And if that class didn't work for me, I actually had another high school that I was going to simultaneously, and they had a AV room, audio video room.
I'm aware. Yes.
Yeah. So we used to screw around with that too. It was fantastic.
That's it. No, any good artist definitely gonna play around with different mediums.
I think that's why people come to our podcast, is to find out the origins of Montessori education prep, because literally what Greg was pioneering apparently was Montessori education.
Well,
whether the city of Boston or the state of Massachusetts was down for that, who knows? But yeah,
they were not.
I'll be interested to get the feedback from my sister who listens to this show. She is a big fan of ours, but she also runs a Montessori school. So I'll be interested to see what she thinks of your assessment there, RaShaun. So
awesome. So now I got to watch my back for Vin Diesel and your sister.
That's it, man. They'll come in. There'll be cubes of beads teaching you how to multiply. That's it. She's going to teach you new style multiplication.
I don't want to go in a dark moment. I don't know about you guys, but I've been beat up before in my life, and it's kind of a weird situation, because when it's about to go down, there's like nowhere to run. You just kind of look around like, fuck, this is happening now, and I'm starting to feel that. Like, I'm starting to have those moments. I'm turning the corner. I'm like, is this the moment I'm about to get my ass handed to me by now? Josh's sister.
Well, that'll make for some good TikTok. I'm sure we can maybe we can go viral on TikTok.
I remember his sister. She had pretty ripped arms, man.
There you go.
You'd better run. You better.
All right, get on to it. Well, Greg, thank you for that for that existential dissection of Sweeney Todd, and it makes me feel good about where I'm coming in and trying to land here from my little 10 minutes of what have you-ness that. Really, I kind of came in with wondering, I mentioned that we were from the 80s, right? So it's certainly the age that perfected the slasher genre. I mean, it was so first and foremost in our mind. I can remember movie posters for Friday the 13th and how many kids talked about it. I was still a little young to actually see it in the theater, but the fact is these weren't theater movies. These were VHS movies, right? These were absolutely these were the ones that came and it was so much in our consciousness, right? Halloween had started it, and then Friday the 13th goes on, and then starts really the idea of the franchise, right? They really start pushing the franchise with this particular genre. And what is it? We have all these tropes, right? We got young teens, they're in the woods, they have sex, somebody dies, people start dying for whatever, for whatever, really subtle reason.
I mean, that was about it. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And for whatever really just, reasons of subtlety and artistic endeavor, the one girl who was a virgin who didn't have sex always gets to last till the end, right? Because of, society and whatever they were trying to teach us in the 80s, which was, as always, a complete contradiction. Right? Yeah. Because the entire film is filled with sex, drugs, and violence, and it's like, see, but be like the good girl, but work it through. But I started, I wondered a lot, and it fits in to some of your points, Greg. Like, what is it about this genre that fascinates us, and what is it that keeps us bringing us back to it? And I really realized we got to go back. It really isn't an 80s genre. I know that's where, like I say, it gets perfected. It gets put into the VHS form where we watch it over and over and over again, which is as an important part of our mediums, if you will, as anything in us, right? That so many times that we had these, movies that we watched over and over again, and we could watch over and over again until we wore the tape down. And it really started to get into our minds. But I got to take it back to what I consider the first slasher film, and about really the man that inspired it all, that continues to inspire it all, that for whatever reason caught our imagination and caught that dark part of our imagination that moves it into. And this was a little film that a little known director named Alfred Hitchcock actually decided to put his house up with a second mortgage because he believed enough in it, based on the tale he can make, which is the movie is Psycho, right? It is a masterpiece, an absolute, a beginning setter of the genre. Unfortunately, nowadays, maybe kids wouldn't be scared by it, but at the time, audiences were truly terrified by it. I find it I find the whole film very fascinating, and how he makes it. Firstly, we have Alfred Hitchcock, excuse me, who's, you know, a bit of a creeper himself. The more we've learned about him, let's just say he was not exactly living up, you know, Harvey Weinstein is probably pointing to him saying, you see, come on, I'm really not that bad. But, you know,
In the
maybe,
name of dogma, why?
yeah, really? You know, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the devil himself keeping dogma under wraps. But the fact of the matter is, Hitchcock was the auteur. He really did understand. And he heard the story of a man named Ed Gein, who lived in Wisconsin. And Ed, kind of a funny story, and the way he comes into American consciousness. Ed is they figure out that Ed had killed 2 women in his town, and they suspect he killed his brother. They go back to his house, and they find a hellscape of which no one had ever thought existed before prior to this time. This is the 1950s, mind you, okay? They open up the door, and sure enough, they find lampshades made of human skin. They find candy bowls made of human skulls. They find chairs made of human bones. They find shower curtains made of human skin. They find an entire skin suit that Ed would wear because Ed, and, you know, once again, going back into these terrible, frightening ideas that really we just could not even get our heads around. Ed apparently was trans and wanted to be a woman, and would, you know, and also loved his mother so much and missed his mother so much. He wanted not only to be a woman, but possibly be his mother. It was a little bit tricky to understand. He was sorting through a lot of things. Ed had a belt. Ed had a belt made of nipples. This did exist. Yes. Different nipples. Now, where he was getting all this was he wasn't actually killing all these people. He did end up killing 2 women. But what he mostly did was he was running to the graveyard, digging people up and taking their skin and making different skin suits and everything else. The true favorite, the one that I just can never get past, is he had a box full of labias. Yes, indeed. He had a box of vaginas. Like how do you end up, you know, hell of a collector's piece, but you know,
yeah,
it was all of those elements. And Hitchcock sees this story and he's like, there's a movie here. Like, he looks at this and he's like, I can put this out, and I can put this out into the public sphere right about now. I can totally get people behind this, and I can totally get people to watch this. Now, this is the early 60s at this point. So truly amazing and fascinating that he was able to get it done. One thing that I always have to state, that my favorite thing is that he had 2 things that the censors wanted him to take out of Psycho. One, of course, it was the cutting of the shower scene. They wanted him to take that out. He managed to get that in. All because of, as he pointed out, it's all suggestion. You see the knife in the shower. You never actually see it strike Janet Leigh. You just see blood in the water. Like, he does it all, compared to some of the things that we're used to seeing nowadays. It is all suggestion. It is all cutting. It is all sound. It is all music. So that was his whole point. The terror I will bring forth will be entirely from my filmmaking. It won't be from the actual images you see. It'll be from the images you imagine. So he had that. And the other thing he managed to get in the film at the time is he has Janet Leigh laying on a bed in her bra. I'm not doing this just to be totally gratuitous, but she is sitting there with her lover that she has left work for midday to clearly have sex with. Now, this, of course, being the society that we live in, this was something that the censors went absolutely fucking crazy over, right? They were far more easily swayed on Janet Leigh getting knifed to death in the shower, right? And putting this back out there than the idea that she would leave work midday to go have sex with a lover. And they were clearly not married, people. They were clearly not married. Now, mind you, he showed no coitus. He showed no nudity. He showed nothing of which would become the standard that we would start to expect from these types of films, right? But the mere implication was enough that they wanted to shut the entire shooting down. Guess the story was, oddly enough, he invited the guy from the censorship board to come and watch him film the scene again that day, and I guess he never showed up. It was really strange, but nevertheless, he gets it through. But However, really, Psycho introduces us to Geen, and Geen gives us Psycho, right? This idea of a man so twisted that he needs to kill his mother over and over again and be his mother, just like the real Geen. So, we get the idea of being trans, and the idea of how frightening that was to society at the time, and just people not understanding it. And as I say, I think it's been totally misrepresented ever since then. But of course, you've had these very strange cases in the case of Geen, that also gives us Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? All of everything that is in the house and in the family is pretty much almost lifted for verbatim, or very, very damn close. They that's where they took the idea, even including his mask, which was another skin mask, right? They call him Leatherface. This idea that he's taking skins and taking trophies. It affects Michael Myers later on down the line. The idea that they called him the Shape, right? Michael Myers was the Shape, even the way they found that mask. Yes, it's a William Shatner mask, but they kind of give us this amorphous look, and it actually looks a fair amount like Ed Gein's original masks. It's interesting to me that all of this genre, and can't finish off. We get Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. Absolutely, again, pointing back to Ed Gein, right? The same idea of this man going around killing different women to make the skin suit to make the transformation. Clearly, what Hitchcock saw in this, and in this man, when he first reads this tale, there is something that we are endlessly fascinated by. We are endlessly fascinated by this archetype, the man for whatever reason, and that reasons that we'll never truly understand, that we'll never grasp, will go so far beyond the pale of what we consider acceptable in society. But nevertheless, we have to hear about it. We absolutely have to hear this story, because it's so fucked up. All those things I just mentioned to you that they found in his house, they really actually found all of those things. They always knew he was a little off. He was not the quiet guy who just kept to himself. He was always odd, right? But nobody expected to find these things when they went into his house. So there's something about that. There's something about the monster that we can just barely see. And the fear of going out in that way brings us to this genre, and why it's still kind of relevant, why we're still there. And hell, I would say that the slasher genre never went away. It just became true crime podcasts and went more into the sphere, more in the sphere of women who get to broadcast and talk about it. But that's my final thought there, when really taking, like I say, the original slasher film, Psycho.
Again, that's why I wanted to open this with the Penny Dreadful, because it never really goes away from that. And it might be kind of a reflection of the psyche of the people at the time. Maybe you don't have these kinds of dark thoughts or violent curiosities, depending on what's going on in your society. I'm glad that you mentioned the misunderstanding and misrepresentation of what it means to be trans.
Of course,
but
yeah, absolutely.
I think part of the point, even though, you do a deeper dive into Ed Gein personally, but I think part of the bigger point is, like that idea, that's just makes it even more terrifying, more perverse, more twisted in the minds of the people who are supposed to be viewing this, like, oh my God, and he wore a wig
and a dress, right?
Oh my God, and he wore a wig. And fun fact, wasn't that that was the first time Psycho was the first time a toilet was on film.
I believe that's the case, yes. And that actually led to there's been some papers written in film theory talking about the toilet and the significance of it, and the way he dumps the bodies in the cars in the swamp and all that, as being like a giant, like the whole movie being a giant metaphor for people having trouble, people have trouble with their own bodily functions and taking a dump. You are in fact, you're onto something there, right? I mean, there was just so much done in that movie. Like, it's the first genre of so many kinds. Of course, Janet Leigh gets to be the first leading lady on film who then dies before the first reel of the film is over, right? Like the main character totally switches. And we've talked about that a few times, but this is the first idea. Okay, you follow this main character. Oh my God, she's gone out and she's met her lover for a lunchtime afternoon delight. She's stolen all this money. Look at this evil woman, and she dies.
She got stabbed before she got stabbed.
She got stabbed before she got stabbed. Right?
Poor woman got stabbed twice.
So
brutality.
There were just so many interesting ideas that Hitchcock played around with this. Of course, as well with voyeurism, with the Anthony Perkins character spying on her.
That was the problem that Hitchcock had.
Yes, it was known. So yes, that's why there is a reason why I was calling him out for being Harvey Weinstein before Harvey Weinstein was it was kind of known, right? That's the case. Great film about that.
Seeing that head. Imagine seeing that head, Albert Hitchcock's head, that shape. Imagine just looking out the window and seeing that in the bushes. I'm not sure if I would be startled or just laughing my ass off. Just like, what? Come on, man. You don't think I would see you? Look at that head.
What are you saying about me, RaShaun?
You look like one testicle sticking out from the bushes.
It would be I don't know. I just
honey, when did we start growing ball bushes?
When did we start growing old fat white dudes? I don't know. What can I say? The man was an auteur. We are in an age where we have to separate the art from the artist, and he definitely.
We've always been in that age.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe we're just more willing to do it before, though, because we just didn't want to even talk about such
things. I mean, we're not going to get off on a tangent. It's what group has to separate, because let's be honest, when the majority doesn't have to separate, you don't have to think about it. While the rest of us are kind of like, yeah, no, this is a bomb fire type of book. I love this book. Oh, about the author? No, I don't want to know anything about the author. Thank you. No, I just rather just read this book. Thank you very much. Keep it moving. Oh, this movie? I love this movie. You want to hear about the director? No, thank you.
No, thank you. No,
that's okay. That's all right. I'll just keep watching whatever they put forth. Thank you.
I'll read my
transactions over. Story. We don't need to get to know each other.
Yep. I'll read my H.P. Lovecraft story and just try and not pretend about some of the poetry he wrote. Okay. Right. Good times. Well, with that, RaShaun, seems like you're in the batter's box, rip roaring, rearing to go here today. You're on it. We are cutting through. We're cutting through the meat. We're slicing it up. We're putting it in meat pies or on meat hooks, as the case may be.
All right. Well, if we're following the late fall analogy of baseball, then I'm just letting people know right now. I'm cutting it loose and letting it fly in the batter's box. I am going heavy on first count, and God damn it, if we get to a full count, I am not doing my job. This is we're going by the edge of our seat on this one, people. So hang tight and let's hope we get a hit. I do love slashers. It's no argument. I agree with everyone else. I do appreciate a lot of what slashers have done to the movie industry and the history around it. These two gentlemen have both eloquently pointed out two great points of history that I'm not going to touch on. So I'm just going to kind of point out what I feel needs to be a slasher and what ends up ultimately unironically killing a slasher before it even gets a chance to start. I would like to point out that the slashers that I tend to love or care about or even think about or fondly remember tend to be the first of any of it, be it an idea, a premise, an attempt, a point of view, or frankly, selfishly, and I'm going to be real, and I think a lot of us would do well in doing so, being honest in the sense of it was my entry point. So there's nostalgia involved. I would point out Nightmare on Elm Street 2. A lot of people would say the first one is arguably the best one. And I'm not going to sit here and argue. It's just Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was the first one I saw. I immediately saw the first one like a couple of weeks after, so it wasn't that much of a separation, but I have a love for that one. I also have a love for those two because in a lot of weird ways, even though it was completely fantasy I've been on record multiple times as saying if you're going to talk fantasy, then really you don't necessarily have rules. But I do also point out multiple times in a lot of different ways and said it on this podcast. And Greg and I have argued multiple different times. It's the rules you establish in the medium that you're creating that I have a problem with. So if you're going to say that these are the rules of this, my series, my movie, my book, my whatever property you're putting forth, whatever intellectual property you're putting forth, whatever you establish to be the rules of it, I'm going to go with. And if you want to change it, I'm fine with it too, but you have to be realistic about it and not act like it's some world shattering thing or some plot developing point. So with that said, with Freddy in 1 and 2, he was kind of within the realm of Nightmare on Elm Street. By the time we get to 7, it was like, it doesn't even matter. Do we even care what the plot is? Like, we know he's coming back. We know no one's stopping him. We know, and his jokes are getting worse. Friday the 13th, the second one, it was my favorite one because, again, it was my entry point. A lot of people will point to the first one, and I'm going to spend some time on that shit too. Candyman took a pretty cool approach, so it was like, it's one of my favorites. Child's Play is ultimately a very, very awesome movie in a lot of different ways. I wouldn't say it's a good movie, but it's a pretty awesome movie, especially when it comes to slashers. And one of the reasons why is they took a different approach. They took a somewhat original idea, and they just fucking went for it. And it's one of the examples I'll talk about what ultimately ends up killing slasher movies. Funny enough, in doing research and breaking it down, and to Josh's point, slashers were so popular that there's so many different subgenres that, going from some of my personal favorites like teen slashers to the mystery slashers to the let me get my boomstick comedy horror slashers to just fantasy slashers like I've already talked about. Even sci-fi dipped into slasher. So the funny part is a lot of people don't think of Predator as a slasher, but it is actually classified as a slasher. So, and if I were to go even that far, I would say Final Destination, the first movie, the way they characterized death in a lot of ways made me feel like I was watching a slasher movie. It was just that instead of a simple knife, the antagonist was able to use a lot of different means to create the same effect, which is ultimately killing. Matter of fact, if I were to continue to go down that line and point out that probably the best slasher that has happened in the last 20 years involved an antagonist that never actually used any sharp object to begin with. He used actually something that technically wasn't even a weapon. It's used in the farming industry as a fucking blowgun. And my man Anton from No Country and Old Men, played by Javier Bardem, I would argue he's been the best slasher in the last 20, 30 years, mainly because for me, a slasher movie, and if you look at the examples I talked about, aside from the nostalgic ones, although the first entries sort of play true to what I'm about to say, a slasher has to pick two different routes, and they have to stick to it. It's either the slasher is someone who is unstoppable because they don't care about societal norms, or it's a slasher that's unstoppable because in some sort of mystic way, and there's no sort of mortal norms that they have to worry about. So in the latter example of what I just talked, latter example of what I just said, the one where they don't necessarily have to care about mortal norms, when that entity dies or the antagonist, when the hero saves the day, when the movie ends and the conflict is over, we are to understand and to expect it probably will not be over. So then it doesn't necessarily take away from the plot or the impact of. We don't have to keep going into those moments talking about how we're going to kill this enemy when we know that's not exactly the case, and ultimately not what the conflict resolves to or needs to resolve to. If you want to look at it from a different perspective, think of Lord of the Rings. No one actually is talking about stopping evil. They're just talking about stopping different interactions and entities of evil. They know that evil is going to come back in some way, shape, or form. That's the whole point. They're just going to go at it in a way of like, hey, this is what's in front of us now. This is what we have to take care of. When slasher/horror movies ignore that and they just keep showing up saying, this is the time we kill the bad guy, this is the time we kill Freddy, This is the time we kill Jason. This is the time we kill Michael. And they keep fucking showing up afterwards. It doesn't make the plot that you have anywhere worth a damn. So you have to fucking pick and just establish that. But they try to keep going in a way of the first part, which is why I said Anton from No Country and Old Men was, to me, one of the best slashers in the last 30 years, because we know that person can die. We know it would take just as much to kill him as it does his victims that he is mercilessly going through the movie killing. There is no stopping this person because they're not stopping by societal norms. In a lot of ways, it sort of taps into our primitive way of thinking about things. We love, and I've said this a few times on our podcast, we love to think of our shared history as we are the result of the good guys. We were the result of the tribes that came up with the good ideas and lived the right way, mostly speaking, and, dissolved to ideas that we eventually had laws, good, bad, or indifferent. But I would argue that really humanity kind of came from the people that said, we don't care about the rules. We are going to win at no end. We are going to win no matter what you feel is sacred or what you say we shouldn't do or care about. A lot of people say the modern day Russian mafia or Eastern European mafias follow the exact same rules. If you cross them, they basically don't care. They will get you wherever the hell they have to get you. There's no sort of unwritten unlawful rules for them. Whereas a lot of us were led to believe, oh, you're be safe here. You be safe here. They don't do this there. It's about respect. They're like, no, fuck all that noise. We're going to get you where we want to get you. That makes, to me, a slasher way more scary than anything else, because in that case, it's like, okay, so this person is moving through the actual systems in which we all exist. I don't have to think about anything fantastical. I don't have to think about this person just like if I'm running through the woods and all of a sudden I got a mile on this person, I trip and all of a sudden the dude's in front of me. I don't have to worry about it. What I do have to worry about is if I get to the police station, this person has already shown that they can get to me by any sort of secure notion. So even if I get to a police station or somewhere where I feel is safe or secure, this individual still has a chance to get to me. That is scary. That is fucking ultimately like unstoppable. So movies have to figure out which way they want to go with it. And unfortunately, whenever they go into a sequel, you immediately, no matter what your rules were, you immediately go to the latter example what I talked about. You're now moving into the property of your bad guy is now unstoppable because it doesn't necessarily follow mortal norms. And when that's the case, more often than not, the plot just gets sloppy. They don't care because they know you're just going to keep showing up for the fucking cannon fodder, which is exactly what each character begins to be. And then the plot is just the same. So why not take a chance? I want to see some shit that like we go crazy with and we start introducing in other Galaxian properties, intellectual properties is what I mean. So like, I mean, I could argue Jamie Lannister in the first couple of seasons of Game of Thrones was a little bit of a fucking maniac slasher. We don't have to go crazy like back in the day with the 80s of the maniac cop and all that weird slasher shit. But what if we had like a slasher in Star Wars? What if we had like a serial killer in like the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul universe, where it's tangentially touching the things that we know, but like in the norms of the principles and rules that we all understand and accept and can be scared by, because then you're moving within it, similar to why Silence of the Lambs was so scary to so many people.
I like your idea that the slasher film is really just a metaphor for the Russian mob. I think that's I like that.
It's fair. It's totally fair.
Not gonna stop. We'll just keep coming for you no matter what. So I
allegedly,
like
I do not know anything about the Russian mob.
Yes,
I do not understand anything about the Russian mob. I want to understand that I don't even know what those words mean.
Don't even try it, man. Piotr is right behind you.
We're good.
Yeah, you're done.
Yes,
they're gonna get me through you guys, so I wouldn't joke too much.
Gregory, there you go. All the good names. I also wanted to say that personally, I think the best of the trilogy, because it really was a trilogy of films, and then they just kept taking it too far. Nightmare on Elm Street was Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. I thought that was just fantastic because it brought in the depth of character to Freddy that took it back to childhood trauma. We found out that he was the product of his mother, a nun, being mercilessly raped by the criminally insane, right? So, we went back to childhood trauma. That who knows? Did Freddy's mom keep him? Did she give him up to the church? Is that how he turned out to be the way he was?
Yeah, see, I hate to break it to you, but that exactly exemplifies my point. Because if you actually see the series all the way through to the last iteration, you'll understand that storyline doesn't mean dick right now. That's the point. Like it just keeps going. The reason why, I mean, let's be honest. The reason why people are giving the new Michael Myers series by Rob Zombie a whole lot of fucking love and blah blah blah, or not Rob Zombie, but what's his name, dude? What's his name? Dude with the hair. Fuck.
I'll look it up.
Like, I want to say Danny Powers, but I feel like that was his name on Eastbound and Down.
Oh.
But anyway, the reason why everyone's loving it so much is because look, I would argue it's not a good movie series so far. Like the movies have not been great. The first one was kind of good, but after that, like it literally is just like we gotta go get them. That's the entire plot of the movie. They're not great. The only thing I think people are holding on to is like, fortunately in this case, there's now not so many chefs in the kitchen. There's at least one or two chefs figuring out what at least the taste is going to be, and they're just going to go for it one way or the other, good, bad, or indifferent. It's not like 2 movies in and then next one is a whole different move, and then the next one after that is a whole different scenario, and then one after that. Like they keep doing that. The plot erodes to the point where it doesn't actually matter what the conflict is. We know exactly what's going to end up happening and stop. You have to have something in there to hook people. It's no different if you want to look at it sort of the lens of comic book movies. If every single comic book hero can literally come back from the dead, what's the actual conflict?
Well, there is always.
I mean, yeah, that's something you lose with. I was gonna say, yeah, like that. All right, I mean, something we didn't want to bring up, but to bring it up really quick, horror movies are cheap. I mean, it's one of the reasons why they are, like this one of the reasons why A24 has, so many horror movies coming out, which a lot of them are really good, but horror movies are cheap. I mean, you basically need some college kids, some blood, and roll. Like it's really all you need. So, to have the unstoppable killer or the force or whatever it is, coming at the college kids who are always caught off guard. It's a fantastic setup, and, they're always being irresponsible or, they're always, there's one or two of them that just have some really deep character flaws, or, maybe it's a family, or maybe it's, just the town who's at the mercy of this terrible killer. But, you're here for the slashing, like you're here for the killing. Where the real question is, where does the sense of dread come in? The sense of dread comes in with the unstoppable killer, right? Like that was, the son of Sam, that was
who can
Ramirez,
die?
Ramirez,
who can die. Like
well,
that's,
yeah,
that's
but
my point.
Yeah, but my point is, like, you didn't know where they were coming from. You didn't know where anything about them. And it's like that taste of the mystery, like what is this thing, coming at you? Like people started turning them into these kind of metaphysical things. And that's when, yeah, so the Freddys and the Michaels and the Jasons, they actually are. Like they actually are in the movies. They are these supernatural things that we think that these killers are, but they're actually losers. Like this new Dahmer movie is coming out, and I can already tell they're making them
two different examples.
Like,
that's my point.
But no, that's not the point. I'm saying like they're making him seem like he's this stone cold killer. It's like, nah, dude, he was some loser from Milwaukee that couldn't get laid. But like you turn him into that thing, and that thing that is what you're talking about. It's turning them into that larger than life killer.
No. If they made a fictional version of Dahmer and then they killed him afterwards, and then 7 movies after Dahmer keeps showing up and he keeps doing the exact same thing and they keep killing him, then yeah, your analogy would be in line with my example. But that's not what I'm talking about. No, that's not what I'm talking about.
You think they wouldn't do that?
The point, no, actually, no. The point I've been pointing out, and I would argue every single one of us and anyone who watches these movies, unless they're overly skittish, if they watch any of these series from start to finish, there's no way in the world they are anywhere scared towards the even middle point. So by the time they get to the end, there's nothing scaring them. There's nothing in the plot that actually would make them get scared. Every iteration, no matter what, you know exactly what's going to come back down to. That kills the idea of any sort of intrigue, which is what you need to actually have fear. You have to care about what that sound is, what that noise is, what that fucking thing flashed before you did. If you don't, you do not have fear. If you do not have fear, you don't have slasher because it's no longer entertaining, even if it's cheap. That actually makes my point. If it was so cheap, I agree with you because they make a lot of money no matter what, especially the series. That's why they keep doing it. But then it just be like, you can make the easier example that they would save more money if they say, hey, what if we just pass the fucking mask? Like every other person fucking like, we just killed this Jason.
Isn't that
now
what
someone
they do?
picked up
like,
another mask and he's a Jason. Like it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable because now it's an idea. Like same thing with Michael Myers. Like, all right, we killed Michael Myers. The detective killed him. The doctor killed him. The Jamie Lee Curtis killed him. Like everyone's fucking killed Michael Myers, but he keeps coming back. So what are we exactly scared of? But if we find out that actually there's some sort of like cult or following, and they keep showing up with a fucking mask, it doesn't matter how many you kill because they're each different people, come from different parts of the society to the point where you don't even know. Kind of like, I don't know, like Koth keepers. And I meant to say that wrong. Like then it gets scary. Like I would be more scared of a fucking quote unquote fictional guy walking down the street with a goddamn mask and a machete versus calling it maybe law enforcement and be scared that one actually might want to do worse than the guy walking down the street with a thing because he's part of some secret organization. Like that's fucking scary shit.
Well, yeah, but just because just because the guy's gonna blow his load at the end doesn't mean that the porn isn't good. I mean, that doesn't necessarily. Yeah, like I don't know.
Oh my God, there he just went with it.
Yeah,
but you don't keep watching. You don't keep watching the same movie. You don't keep watching the same actors. You watch different.
Clearly, you don't know my collection.
But
go ahead.
You said collection. You said collection. That in the word, in its definition, denotes difference.
Well, nevertheless, you're
difference.
Clearly,
let's be. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Clearly, RaShaun is not a fan of the trope.
It's gonna get moist. Yeah. Go ahead.
I am. I named multiple movies in it. I didn't go through the list of all the cool movies in the 80s and 90s that weren't all great movies, but awesome in the sense of the idea of the slasher genre. They all follow some sort of trope. But the idea is like you have to decide, are we going to have finality in the sense of the person, the entity, the antagonist, or the sort of theory behind it? One way or the other. Like that's how you keep it scary, or just make it one movie. Like a lot of movies I talked about, they're the same fucking movie as as Jason and Michael Myers. They're the same fucking movie. A lot of these movies are, but because there's only one, it's easy to get scary. It's easy to understand, like, okay, now it's time to frighten up.
Well, I think the favorite fact I'll leave us here on speaking of finding our ending, is you were meant, take it back to Nightmare on Elm Street. I always just love the fact that Wes Craven apparently read an LA Times article about a man. He was a Hmong. I believe he's from Laos. And it was his family had come over after Vietnam because of supporting the U.S. during Vietnam. And the article proceeded to detail about how the father of the family had died in his sleep. And there were certain vigils being held because they're apparently in Laotian mythology, there was the idea of a creature that could come and kill you in your dreams. And if you died in your dreams, you would die in real life. So I just always find it funny and interesting how real life lore actually does, in fact, end up influencing us in life. Oh, well, with that deep dive and that deep cut, we should say, into the slasher genre going on there, going into the deepest, the darkest, and the bloodiest forms of of horror. That's it. DJ Splatter up here on stage. All right. It's gonna be a bloody
Roxy.
time.
Oh, sorry. Wrong DJ.
All right.
No, yeah, no. Everybody worth their damn, who wants to work in some kind of media has to have their stripper DJ voice in there somewhere. I mean, really, that's all. That's all we're ever working off of. But we've come to the end of another round of thoughts here. Another more grist for the mill here with the steam gentlemen. RaShaun, as always, I want to say thank you. And what do you got going on for the rest of the day and the week?
Well, one shout out to Jamie Lee Curtis. She was getting work in the 80s on the slasher genre. She was doing work.
Damn,
shout out to her.
Yeah.
Second, so now my head's all sort of like pinwheels and screwed up. So does that mean the DJ is a stripper, or that it's a DJ for a stripper? When you say stripper DJ,
sure,
I feel like
suppose,
you need to. It's like you don't put the comma in the right spot. You know what I mean?
Well,
I'm just trying to help out people.
That comma, that's not an Oxford comma. That can get moved around. That's all.
I just want them to understand what kind of entertainment's coming their way.
Indeed.
I guess whatever it takes to pay the rent, as they say. All right.
You do what you want with the comma.
Yeah, you could take that comma. Oh, Gregory Starchild, you fed us up a tasty meat pie of treats there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Just gonna say to our listeners, enjoy Murder Month, and if it's going to be Murder Month, then we should actually keep it Columbus Day. Just
well, it does kind of fall nicely there, doesn't it? That all gets wrapped
exactly.
up.
Yeah, just violence and dehumanization.
Yeah, it's a good
Columbus
point.
fits perfectly.
Ironically, this just got dark.
There you go. I did get dark. That was that was up there with some of our Little Mermaid talk. So, all right. Well, in the meantime, I am Josh, the Birdman. I'm gonna be just trying to take care of my kids and get them to soccer practice. We're in soccer season right now, so I have very little time and very little bandwidth for absolutely anything else. But while I have you here, I'm gonna ask you to go on over to our socials and follow us there. We're on Facebook at The Steam Gentleman. We are on Instagram at Do You Even Steam Bro, and similar things like that on TikTok. I'm sure if you type it in, you can find us there one way or the other. We're doing our best. And if by all means, if you head on over to iTunes, rate and review us, give us the old 5-star, and then say, you can say whatever you want after that. I'm really don't care, but we really need that algorithm pushed. The more you can push that, well, the more we can make this our day job. So in the meantime, this is Josh the Birdman, signing off for now, telling you to keep your heat up and keep your head of steam on.